Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap-up. I read a total of 7 books this month, and I'm going to be telling you guys my star rating and just kind of like what I thought of them in general. Apologies for the floor sitting. This is the best lighting in our apartment. It is such a cloudy day out today. I felt like November was a pretty good month for me. I think I've read the most books this month. From when I started really reading in August, which is interesting because 2 of the books I read are like 600-700 pages. Imagine how many books I could read if I wasn't reading 700-page books. The first book I read this month was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This book was great. It got me out of a reading slump that I experienced at the end of October. The beginning was a little bit hard for me because it had been a while since I read like fantasy. You know, it's a whole lot of world building and descriptions and words that you don't recognize, and like you have to associate new words with what this looks like and all these things. So it took me a little bit at the beginning to actually like this book. But as soon as you're past that, it's so good. I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read, of course, is A Court of Mist and Fury, book number 2 in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This one was just even better than the first. I thought it was so good. This is another 5 star. I might even give this 6 stars. Without spoiling anything too much, at the beginning of this book was very conflicted about 2 people. If you know, you know. Even though this book is like, it's over 600 pages long, 620 pages long basically. I read it so fast. I think it only took me one more day, like a few more hours to read than the first one. And like, look at the size comparison. The next book I read was number 3 in the series, A Court of Wings and Ruin. This one was, I have a love-hate relationship with this one because it was much harder for me to get through. It took me so much longer to read, and I found myself just not wanting to read it at times. It just felt like a lot less action and a lot more story building and character building. And I'm still glad I read it just because, you know, it's the 3rd in the series and I want to finish the series, and I know the series is going to be really good. I understand why it was necessary for all of that character building now. Plus the ending is the best part. It's a whole roller coaster of emotions. So after this book, I took a little break from the ACOTAR series, and I read Briar Rose by Jane Yolen, sorry. I didn't actually read it. I DNF'd it, which means did not finish because it's bad. I know that it's young adult fiction, so I am taking that into account. It follows our main character, Becca, who is a recent college graduate. She tries to interpret her grandma's life and how it relates to this bedtime story of Briar Rose that their grandma's been telling them since they were children. Long story short, it's a Sleeping Beauty retelling of the Holocaust. It seemed so weird to me that the idea going into this book was, let's make a fairy tale retelling, but let's also make it edgy and relate it to the Holocaust. That was just a bit off-putting, in my opinion. What's even more interesting is this book, it was selected as a book that we were going to read in one of my college literature classes. How this book was selected for a college literature class, I have absolutely no idea. Okay, and then I went back to A Court of Frost and Starlight. This is the 4th book in the ACOTAR series, and it's little. It's like a little novella. This one it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. Oh, I think I forgot. I also gave this one 3 stars, but honestly, this one's maybe like a 3.5 because it was better than this one. Honestly, I don't see why this one couldn't have just been like tacked on to the beginning of the 5th book. Their only issue in the book is what to get each other for presents during winter solstice. It just felt a little bit unnecessary for me, which I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. It's not that important to the rest of the story. Then I read Twisted Love. This is book 1 of the Twisted series. I gave it 1 star. It's not for me. I will start by saying that it is spicy. However, the tropes in this are just not my favorite. It is Grumpy X Sunshine, which I already don't really like in the first place. It has a lot of like alpha male possessive stuff in it. It's basically a lot of you're mine, no one else can touch you. There's a lot of jealousy and anger. I thought some of the things that this man was saying were so disturbing. Like these tabs in here, these are just like my biggest red flags that I started to notice when I was reading the book. I understand that some people like these tropes and some people like this, but this man was just a huge walking red flag to me, and he said some of the creepiest stuff I have ever heard. To top it all off, there is a very weird like murder aspect that's tacked onto this book, where the main character's parent apparently tried to kill her as a child. It just seemed so unnecessary and thrown together. It is safe to say that I will not be reading the other books in this series unless someone in the comments can convince me that they get better and they're not so weird. The last book I read this month is a book that I've had it for a while, and I remember picking it up and I read the beginning and then I didn't read the rest. It's Children of the Flames by Lucette Madelon Lagnado and Sheila Kohn Deckel. I thought this book was so good and interesting. I would say it's a memoir about the twins who were experimented on during World War II under Dr. Mengele. I personally loved the layout of this book. It switches back and forth between like a retelling of Dr. Mengele's life from childhood until he dies, and the stories from the twins. It was just so eye-opening and moving and horrific. I actually saw a lot of people criticize this book on Goodreads because they thought that it read too much like a history book and that they didn't dive deep enough into the life of the twins during the war, like while they were in the camps. It's interesting because the traits that a lot of people complained about are actually the things that I loved about it the most. Don't get me wrong, the lives of the twins during the war was of course very interesting. I would have loved to hear more about it, obviously, but the book focuses a lot on the lives of the twins after the war ends and them rebuilding their lives and the traumas that they dealt with, which I thought was just way more interesting because I feel like you don't hear about that in history class. You don't learn about that. I had to keep reminding myself that this was not fiction. This is people's experience. Like, this happened. Even though I love this book, I will not be giving it a rating just because I think it's kind of weird to rate someone else's experience. But I loved it. It was really good. So this is all 7 of the books that I read during the month of November. Overall, really good month, I would say. I'm excited to read the last book of this series, which I will hopefully finish in December. We'll see. Hopefully this video goes up today and I will have another video going up on Thursday, which I am really excited about, which I think is gonna be really fun. So I'll see you all then. Bye.